The morning sun glistened off the marble masterpiece in her front yard as Tamara gazed out the window, coffee in hand. Just last week, the HOA had demanded she remove her prized fountain, a legacy from her late father. But little did they know, she had a plan. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Tamara sighed deeply, feeling the weight of the HOA's letter burn a hole in her pocket. She had fought tooth and nail to keep the fountain, but their threats of fines and legal action were relentless. It's an eyesore, they claimed. It doesn't match the pristine aesthetic of our neighborhood. As she headed out the door, Tamara paused in front of the fountain, running her fingers along the intricate carvings. This wasn't just some garish lawn ornament. It was a piece of her family's history. Her father had commissioned it years ago when they first moved in, proudly displaying it as the centerpiece of their property. "Don't worry, Dad," she whispered. "I'm not giving up without a fight." At the community center, Tamara squared her shoulders and marched into the HOA meeting, every pair of eyes turning to glare at her. "I'm here about the fountain," she announced, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. The HOA president, a stern-faced woman named Brenda, stood up and cleared her throat. "Miss Samuels, we've been quite clear on our position. That eyesore has to go, or we'll be forced to take legal action." Tamara felt a surge of defiance. "Well, I'm here to inform you that the fountain has been designated a historic landmark by the city." A collective gasp rippled through the room as Brenda's face turned beet red. "What? That's impossible. You can't just—" "I can, and I did," Tamara interrupted, a triumphant grin spreading across her face. "My father spent years researching the fountain's origins and petitioning the Historical Society. They finally agreed to recognize it as a unique piece of our neighborhood's history." Brenda sputtered, her composure crumbling. "But the neighborhood bylaws—" "Don't apply in this case," Tamara cut her off. "The fountain is now protected under city ordinance. You have no legal grounds to demand its removal." The room erupted into heated discussion, with some HOA members shouting angrily while others murmured in disbelief. Tamara stood her ground, feeling a sense of vindication wash over her. "This meeting is adjourned," Brenda announced, her voice shaking with barely contained fury. "We'll be reviewing our options, Miss Samuels. This isn't over." As Tamara strode out of the community center, her steps light and her heart racing, she couldn't help but savor the moment. The fountain was safe, and the HOA had been outmaneuvered. But she knew the battle was just beginning. The drive home was a blur for Tamara, her mind racing with the implications of her victory. She knew the HOA wouldn't take this lying down, and she had to be prepared for their next move. As she pulled into the driveway, Tamara felt a sense of unease settle in the pit of her stomach. Something wasn't right. The fountain, normally the centerpiece of her meticulously landscaped front yard, was surrounded by yellow caution tape. Tamara hurried out of the car, her heart pounding. What the? A well-dressed man stood in front of the fountain, clipboard in hand. "Miss Samuels, I presume," he said in a cool, authoritative tone. "What's going on here?" Tamara demanded, her voice sharp with frustration. "I'm George Simmons, the city's historical preservation officer," the man replied. "I'm afraid there's been a complaint filed regarding the authenticity of your fountain." Tamara's blood ran cold. "What? But it's been designated a historic landmark." Simmons nodded, his expression unreadable. "That's correct. However, the HOA has raised concerns about the fountain's provenance. They claim it's a modern replica, not the original structure." "That's ridiculous," Tamara exclaimed. "My father spent years researching the history of this fountain. It's the real thing, I can assure you." Simmons held up a hand, silencing her. "Be that as it may, we're required to conduct a thorough investigation. Until we can verify the fountain's authenticity, I'm afraid I'll have to place it under a stop-work order." Tamara's stomach twisted with dread. "You can't do this. The HOA is just trying to find a way around the landmark designation." "I understand your frustration, Miss Samuels," Simmons said, his tone infuriatingly calm. "But I'm simply following protocol. The fountain will remain under observation until we can resolve this issue." Tamara watched helplessly as Simmons and a team of city workers began inspecting the fountain, taking measurements and photographs. Her heart sank as she realized the HOA had found a loophole to undermine her victory. As she trudged back into the house, Tamara felt the familiar sting of tears in her eyes. She had been so close to protecting her father's legacy, only to have it snatched away. But she wasn't about to give up without a fight. "Hang in there, Dad," she whispered, gazing out the window at the fountain she loved so dearly. "I'm not going down without a battle." The next few days were a whirlwind of activity for Tamara. She spent hours on the phone, calling anyone and everyone who could help her fight the HOA's latest attempt to remove the fountain. First, she reached out to the historical society that had granted the landmark designation, pleading with them to intervene. But their hands were tied. The city's Historical Preservation Office had the final say on matters of authenticity. Undeterred, Tamara then turned her attention to the local media, hoping to generate public support for her cause. She crafted a passionate statement outlining the fountain's significance and the HOA's underhanded tactics, and within hours, it had gone viral on social media. The floodgates opened as reporters from all the major news outlets clamored for interviews. Tamara seized the opportunity, using the platform to her advantage. She painted a vivid picture of her father's unwavering dedication to preserving the fountain, and the community's collective heartbreak at the prospect of losing such a beloved landmark. The response was overwhelming. Neighbors and strangers alike rallied behind Tamara, flooding the HOA's inbox with angry emails and calls demanding they leave the fountain alone. Even the city council members were pressured to intervene, suddenly finding themselves in a PR nightmare. Brenda, the HOA president, was apoplectic. She called Tamara, her voice trembling with rage. "This has gone far enough, Tamara," she spat. "You've made a mockery of our neighborhood with your little media circus. We're going to prove that fountain is a fake, and then you can kiss your precious legacy goodbye." Tamara steeled her nerves, refusing to back down. "You can try, Brenda, but you'll never break me. This fountain means everything to me, and I'll fight you tooth and nail to keep it." The line went silent for a moment, save for Brenda's labored breathing. "We'll see about that," she hissed, before abruptly hanging up. Tamara sank into the nearest chair, her adrenaline rush finally starting to ebb. She knew the battle was far from over, but for now, she had managed to turn the tide in her favor. The HOA was on the defensive, and the entire community was watching, waiting to see who would emerge victorious. With a renewed sense of determination, Tamara gazed out the window at the fountain, now surrounded by a small crowd of curious onlookers. "I won't let you down, Dad," she whispered. "Not this time." The next few days passed in a blur of activity as Tamara worked tirelessly to prepare her defense. She knew the HOA would be pulling out all the stops to discredit the fountain's authenticity, and she had to be ready. First, she reached out to the Historical Society, begging them to intervene on her behalf. After hours of pleading and negotiation, they agreed to send a team of experts to conduct a thorough inspection of the fountain. Next, Tamara scoured her father's old records, searching for any documentation that could bolster her case. She pored over meticulously detailed invoices, photographs, and handwritten notes, piecing together the history of the fountain like a puzzle. As the day of the inspection dawned, Tamara felt a mixture of anxiety and cautious optimism. She had done everything in her power to prepare, and now it was time to put her faith in the experts. The team of historians and preservation specialists spent hours examining the fountain, taking measurements, and comparing it to historical records. Tamara hovered nearby, her heart pounding with every passing minute. Finally, the lead investigator, a stern-faced woman named Dr. Evelyn Sinclair, approached Tamara with a solemn expression. "Miss Samuels, "I must commend you on the impeccable documentation you've provided," she said, her voice measured and professional. "After a thorough examination, we can confirm that this fountain is indeed the original structure, commissioned by your father decades ago." Tamara felt a surge of relief wash over her, her knees nearly buckling from the sheer weight of emotion. "Thank you, Dr. Sinclair," she breathed, her voice trembling. "I can't tell you how much this means to me." The older woman nodded, a faint smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. "Your father would be proud, Miss Samuels. This fountain is a true treasure, and we're honored to be a part of preserving its legacy." As the team packed up their equipment, Tamara couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph. She had won this round, but she knew the HOA wouldn't go down without a fight. Brenda, the HOA president, was seething with barely concealed rage as she approached Tamara, her eyes narrowed to slits. "So, you managed to pull the wool over the Historical Society's eyes," she spat. "But mark my words, Tamara, this isn't over. We'll find a way to get that eyesore removed, one way or another." Tamara met her gaze unflinchingly, her spine straightening with defiance. "Bring it on, Brenda. I'm not going anywhere." As Brenda stalked away, Tamara turned her attention back to the fountain, its timeless beauty shimmering in the afternoon sun. She knew the battle had only just begun, but she was more determined than ever to protect her father's legacy. The days following the successful inspection of the fountain were a whirlwind of activity for Tamara. She had emerged victorious in the first round of her battle with the HOA, but she knew they wouldn't give up so easily. As the news of the fountain's authenticity spread, Tamara found herself at the center of a media frenzy. Reporters clamored for interviews, eager to cover the ongoing saga of the small-town homeowner taking on the powerful HOA. Tamara embraced the spotlight, using it as a platform to rally the community and shine a light on the HOA's underhanded tactics. But Brenda and the rest of the HOA were not about to concede defeat. They doubled down on their efforts, employing a team of high-powered lawyers to find any legal loophole they could exploit. One evening, as Tamara was preparing dinner, her phone rang. She grimaced when she saw Brenda's name flashing on the screen. "What do you want, Brenda?" she answered, bracing herself for the onslaught. "I'm calling to inform you that the HOA has filed a lawsuit against you," Brenda announced, her voice dripping with satisfaction. "We're challenging the historical landmark designation on the grounds that the fountain is a public nuisance and a safety hazard." Tamara felt her heart drop. "You can't be serious." "The experts have already confirmed the fountain's authenticity." "Oh, we're very serious," Brenda retorted. "And we have the backing of the city council. They're just as eager as we are to get rid of that eyesore." Tamara's mind raced, trying to come up with a counter-strategy. This is ridiculous. The fountain has been here for decades, and it's never posed a safety risk before. "Well, that's where you're wrong, my dear," Brenda purred. "We've hired an engineering firm to conduct a structural assessment, and they've determined that the fountain is in dire need of repairs. If you refuse to remove it, we'll have no choice but to condemn it as a public hazard." Tamara felt her blood boil. This is all just a ploy to get rid of the fountain. "You know it, and I know it." "Maybe so," Brenda conceded, "but the law is on our side. You have 2 weeks to remove the fountain, or we'll do it for you, and send you the bill." The line went dead, leaving Tamara to stare at her phone in stunned silence. She had been so close to victory, only to have the rug pulled out from under her. But she refused to give up without a fight. Steeling her resolve, Tamara began to formulate a plan. If the HOA wanted a war, then that's exactly what they were going to get. Tamara spent the next several days in a flurry of activity, working tirelessly to build her case against the HOA's latest attack. She knew she had to move quickly if she wanted to save the fountain from being demolished. First, she reached out to the city's historical preservation office, pleading with them to intervene on her behalf. But their hands were tied. The HOA's lawsuit had brought the matter before the city council, who were now firmly on the side of the homeowners association. Undeterred, Tamara turned her attention to the local media, once again using her platform to rally public support. She gave impassioned interviews, painting a vivid picture of the HOA's blatant disregard for the community's history and their willingness to trample over the rights of individual homeowners. The response was overwhelming. Neighbors and concerned citizens flooded the city council's inboxes with angry emails and phone calls, demanding they protect the beloved fountain. Even local businesses, eager to capitalize on the fountain's status as a tourist attraction, joined the fray, threatening to withdraw support if the council sided with the HOA. But Brenda and her cohorts were relentless. They doubled down on their efforts, hiring a team of high-powered engineers to conduct a comprehensive structural assessment of the fountain. And when the report came back, it painted a bleak picture. The fountain was in dire need of costly repairs and posed a serious safety risk to the community. Tamara felt her heart sink as she pored over the detailed findings. The HOA had managed to find a loophole, and they were exploiting it to the fullest. If she couldn't find a way to refute the engineering report, the fountain's fate would be sealed. Desperate, Tamara reached out to her father's old friend, a renowned structural engineer who had been involved in the fountain's original construction. She begged him to take a look at the HOA's assessment, certain that he would be able to find flaws in their analysis. It was a long shot, but Tamara had no other choice. The clock was ticking, and the fate of her father's legacy hung in the balance. She could feel the walls closing in, but she refused to give up without a fight. As she waited anxiously for her father's friend to respond, Tamara gazed out the window at the fountain, its marble surface glinting in the waning sunlight. "Hang in there, Dad," she whispered. "I'm not going down without a battle." The days that followed were a tense and anxious time for Tamara. She waited with bated breath for her father's old friend, renowned structural engineer Robert Hawkins, to review the HOA's assessment of the fountain. Finally, the call came, and Tamara answered with trembling hands. "Tamara, I've looked over the report, and I can say with certainty that it's a load of hogwash," Hawkins declared, his gruff voice brimming with conviction. Tamara felt a surge of relief wash over her. "I knew it. I knew they were just making up excuses to get rid of the fountain." "Exactly," Hawkins replied. "The structural issues they've identified are minor and easily fixable. This fountain is built to last, and it's certainly not a public safety hazard." Tamara wasted no time in contacting the city council, armed with Hawkins' expert analysis. She demanded an emergency meeting, determined to present her case before the HOA could solidify their position. The council members, faced with a growing public outcry and the credible counter-evidence, were forced to reconsider their stance. After hours of heated debate, they ultimately decided to postpone any action on the HOA's lawsuit, pending a comprehensive re-evaluation of the fountain's condition. Brenda, the HOA president, was fuming. "This is an outrage," she shouted, her face flushed with rage. "You're letting one stubborn homeowner derail our entire neighborhood's plans." Tamara stood her ground, a triumphant grin spreading across her face. "That's where you're wrong, Brenda. This isn't about me anymore. It's about preserving our community's history, and the people have spoken." As the meeting adjourned, Tamara felt a renewed sense of hope. The battle was far from over, but she had managed to buy some time, and the momentum was shifting in her favor. That evening, as she gazed out at the fountain, now surrounded by a growing crowd of supporters, Tamara felt a surge of pride and determination. Her father's legacy would not be erased without a fight, and she was more determined than ever to protect it. "Hang in there, Dad," she whispered. "I'm going to see this through to the end." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity as Tamara worked tirelessly to build her case against the HOA. With the city council's decision to postpone any action on the lawsuit, she knew she had a precious window of opportunity to turn the tide in her favor. First, she enlisted the help of a team of historical preservation experts who conducted a thorough inspection of the fountain. Their findings were unequivocal. The fountain was not only authentic, but it was also a true masterpiece of craftsmanship, worthy of being recognized as a landmark. Armed with this new evidence, Tamara returned to the city council, this time with an impassioned plea to officially designate the fountain as a historic site, granting it permanent protection from the HOA's attempts at removal. The council members, faced with the overwhelming public support for the fountain and the compelling arguments presented by the preservation experts, had little choice but to rule in Tamara's favor. The fountain was officially recognized as a cherished piece of the community's history, permanently shielded from the HOA's attempts at demolition. Brenda and the rest of the HOA were furious, their faces twisted with rage as they stormed out of the council chambers. Tamara watched them go, a sense of triumph and relief washing over her. "You did it, Dad," she whispered, gazing up at the magnificent fountain. "We did it." In the weeks that followed, the fountain became a symbol of the community's resilience and the power of grassroots activism. Neighbors gathered around the iconic structure, hosting picnics and community events, celebrating the victory that had been won through sheer determination and unwavering spirit. Tamara, once the target of the HOA's ire, now found herself the toast of the town. Reporters clamored for interviews, eager to share her inspiring story with the world. And as she stood in front of the fountain, surrounded by the smiling faces of her neighbors, she knew that her father's legacy had been forever etched into the fabric of their community. In the end, the HOA's attempt to erase the fountain had only served to elevate it to an even greater level of significance. What had once been a source of contention had now become a cherished landmark, a testament to the power of standing up for what you believe in, no matter the odds. As the sun set on the fountain, casting a warm glow over the surrounding neighborhood, Tamara couldn't help but feel a sense of profound gratitude and pride. Her father's dream had been realized, and his memory would live on for generations to come. "Thank you, Dad," she whispered, a solitary tear of joy sliding down her cheek. "This is for you."